Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Cut the Line. If you're new here, Cut the Line is one of the original shows of the Yellow Vine Network that explores several diverse topics, such as today's. I'm Ahmed, and I'm joined by Ali, who is the founder and manager of the Yellow Vine Network. He oversees everything that goes on in the network, so we're really happy that you're here with us, Ali. Hi.
Hey Ahmed, thank you very much for having me. It's honestly a pleasure to be here to talk about this topic, really, because I've been interested in this topic for such a long time, you can't imagine.
Yeah.
And thank you for the short biography as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me in the network. All right. So I want to preface this episode by saying that all of this episode is based on our own personal opinions, and we're not here to attack anyone or target anyone. So just keep that in mind. That's just a precaution and like a preface.
Yeah,
I have a question for you.
sure.
Um, how many years of schooling did you do total before uni?
Well, just like a lot of other people on this planet, I've had 14 years of school.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and how many of that do you think were exactly how you would have liked it to be?
I would say none, to be quite honest.
Yeah, that's the sad truth because this system, the education system, no matter what, because there are different types of education available here in Kurdistan, but the
Yeah,
system is still not quite, it still does not work well.
for us.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a representation of the person's work ethic or of the person's talents.
Yeah.
It really just shows a test score on a paper, and that's the only proof and the only thing that you need to move on from your schooling and enter higher education.
Well, the thing is, Ahmed, I believe that the education systems that are available at the moment are very outdated. It's not suitable for the current generation. And yeah, I think there should be an educational reform, which is going to be today's episode. We're going to talk about educational reform in details. But before we begin discussing our views and our suggestions and all of that, we should define what educational reform is.
Yeah. So, educational reform is basically a way of changing the educational system, the public education system, and making it better. It's a goal. It's something we look forward to, or it's something that we all hope will happen soon. Because honestly, the only way to impact future lives and the only way to make sure that our future will be stable and our future leaders and presidents and everyone will come from a good educational background is through educational reform, because education builds people, it creates lives.
It changes lives, really.
Exactly, yeah. So we need to restructure the educational system. But before we get into that, let's talk about the current educational system and how many different types there are. So there are three main types, right?
Well, it depends on the region or nation you're talking about. Obviously, all nations have their own specific education system. But in this episode, or in this particular segment, I'm going to talk about the Kurdish education systems in details. So, the schools that we have in Kurdistan, or the major education systems available at the Kurdistan region, are the public school systems, the private school systems, and the international school systems. The public school systems are usually subjects, both scientific and humanities subjects, that are taught in the Kurdish language, mostly. And we also have the private school systems, which include, again, the national system, but it's taught in the English language usually. And finally, we have the international school systems, which, well, depending on the school itself, they all abide either by the American or by the British system. Now that we have discussed the three major types of education systems that are currently available in the Kurdistan region, let us determine the pros and cons in each respective system. So, I would like to begin with the public school education system. What would you say are the pros?
The pros of the public school education system is that you get to sit leaving examination, the baccalaureate, at the at your final year, and you basically get put into whatever uni based on how well you did on that exam. So if you do good, then you are going to go to wherever you have chosen to go to. So no one can take away your good marks from you. That's,
Sorry, this includes public and private school systems
yeah,
because these two systems will take the Wizari test, what we call the Wizari test, which is the national examination for,
yeah.
it's basically a college entrance exam, if you think of it that way.
The older name for it was the baccalaureate. Like
Yeah.
it's like the French name. Yeah. So yeah. So basically, yeah, this includes both of that's the pros of both.
Mm.
But the cons is that it you're only judged based on those few exams. You're not judged based on your talents, you're not judged based on your abilities, you're not judged based on your motivation to study a certain subject. It's just you're judged based on a number on a piece of paper.
This is one of the aspects regarding the pros and cons of both the public and the private education systems here in the region. I would like to focus on other aspects too, actually. One, which is, I would say, slightly controversial, would be that students that have come from public and private school systems are, I would say, less stressed, you know? They are less stressed compared to students that have come from international school systems. What I mean by that is students that have come from the public and private school systems, they weren't really stressed with studying too much throughout the 12 years. It's only at the 12th year in which the students are stressed. However, the stress at international school systems, it's always been there. You always have that stress ever since you're a child.
That is actually true, yeah. But the thing with international systems is that even then, your marks are only counted from like grade 9, 9 and 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's where the stress begins, really, for so many people, because so many people take it easy until they find out, oh, this is the real world, real life situation. Well, this will take me to university. So that's when they begin studying, which, yeah, that is a very, I don't think that's a pro. I think that's a really bad side because we're studying for marks. We're not studying for learning. What I'm saying is that we should be studying for the purpose of learning, not for the purpose of doing well on a test. Yes, tests are important. We need to do well on them. It's what the tests determine our careers, you know?
Mm,
But we need to, like, I believe that students should always keep a good record of their grades. Like, there shouldn't be a huge jump between their previous years and then their final year. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone should study for the purpose of education first, then go on to the test side and the grade and scoring aspect.
yeah. The thing is, to begin with, we don't even need to have that stress. The stress is unnecessary because these education systems were not structured to consider the mental health of students themselves. So, no matter the system, whether it's public, private, or international, students will still be stressed somehow. Whether it would be only in 1 year, in 2 years, or 12 years, uh, it's still not good mentally speaking.
Yeah. But I think we've reached a state where is very stress is a very normal part of growing up,
Mm,
especially of the teenage years. I feel like it's just stressful situation after stressful situation. It's a non-ending cycle, and everything is just so big to you in those years. You just feel like your whole entire world is just being 15, you know?
to be honest, I condemn normalizing stress because I have read through the effects of stress. both in your physical health and in your mental health.
Yeah, stress is not good. It's not good, but that's why I said it. Like we've kind of normalized it. It's just become a normal part of the. It's a routine. It's now a routine thing. It's a routine feeling.
Yeah,
We feel it every hour. But the stress that comes with Wizari, especially that final year where literally everyone says they're like, oh, that person got a perfect score from grade 1 till grade 11, but couldn't get through grade 12. Like there are countless stories about people who were the top of their class all their school years. Then they became grade 12, they couldn't get a mark, and then they became the topic of conversation for everyone. So the stress that students feel in the senior year in the public and private schools in the baccalaureate Wizari system is insane because nothing, no past experience, no past grade or score or ranking will determine how well you're going to do in your Wizaris. There isn't something you can do that will guarantee you a good Wizari mark. It's literally up to fate. Like I don't know any other way to describe it other than fate or luck.
which is too unfortunate, to be honest. Because imagine, yeah, imagine a student that has tried so hard throughout their life to achieve what they've always wanted to achieve, and in the end, they don't achieve what they've always dreamt of.
Exactly. It's a nightmare. But I've had so many friends who are so talented, who are such bright, such smart students, but they didn't get what they wanted in grade 12. And thank God, a gap year is allowed because before like I don't know, like in 15 years ago, I've heard that even gap years were not even possible. Like you would sit your Rizaris once and that's it. You can't take a gap year if you don't like your mark. So you were forced to go to a university. But now, thank God, gap years are possible. So yeah, that was my point. That I know so many people who didn't get what they deserved, and I don't know what's the what's the cause of this, but I do know that if the system was different, they wouldn't have gone through all of those terrible things they went
Yeah.
through.
And from what I've heard, Wizari exams back then were very difficult.
True. Yeah, it was writing. It was writing essay based. It was not a multiple choice. It was not standardized. It was so they would grade it by hand and like check questions. And there always was a problem with the English system because it was like translated. Yeah. So yeah, it was more difficult. But you really can't compare because nowadays more detailed questions come back. But still, even the detailed questions are kind of clear because there are so many question banks and study guides. So it's a complicated thing. Yeah,
Don't you think an essay-based question would be better than multiple choice questions?
for sure. Listen, two aspects. One, for sure would because for example, especially for the humanities, like humanities subjects, like Kurdish, Arabic, and English, you need to write an essay for those subjects. Like, how are you going to do a language class without any writing
Mm,
assignment? You know,
yeah,
like you need it. But on another side, there were too much human error while grading those papers. I've heard countless stories of people getting a mark just because their paper was misplaced or their paper was mislabeled as someone else's paper. The human error that there was in those exams when they graded those exams by hand, question by question, line by line, was insane. There were way too many errors. But now, since it's standardized, it's like the bubble sheet, you know,
yeah,
it's like the scanner uh, grades it all. So, and in the end, when you get your actual scores, you actually there's a website you can literally write your code on it and it will literally show you your exam paper and question by question literally will count it for you what you have a mistake in. So this is more fair because there is no error. If there is error, you can literally go and tell them and they will fix it. Like I'm so glad about this. But back then the only thing that they would fix is they would like check the summation of the scores, and that's it. Like even if it was graded wrongly, even if a question was correct but they counted it as incorrect, you would still get an incorrect answer.
Yeah. What about another aspect? Let's focus more on the international school systems. The thing is, with that particular system, the system is not that different from both public or private. Let's be honest. Like most of the subjects are the same, the ideas are the same. Among the three systems, they're all fairly similar, to be honest. But international students or students that have come from the international school systems or are part of the international school systems, I would say they're somewhat more privileged compared to the other two school systems because of their campus, their vicinity. You know, it's a
Mm.
lot different.
The facilities, the equipment,
Yeah,
the opportunities, the diplomas, the recognition, the accreditation. Yeah, it is different, of course. They have more opportunities to go abroad because they don't need to go through an equalization process that much since they're already an international school. Yeah, it is very different. Yeah, but I think in the end it really just comes back to the students' will and the students' like dedication,
yeah, their commitment.
commitment, dedication. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's why I think wherever a student is, whether it's in a public school, a private school, or an international school, they will end up studying a degree that they want to study. It's literally, I believe that with all my heart, because it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter who's behind you, it doesn't matter what's going on. If you're passionate about something and you give it your full energy and you work hard and you make sure you master it, then you will get what you want. Maybe not directly, but you will in some sort of other way, through other options.
yeah. I would say this is it regarding the pros and cons of the current education systems found here in the Kurdistan region. Of course, there's a lot more, but we cannot really address the endless amounts of pros and cons.
And we can only speak from experience, we've only experienced.
Yeah, exactly. I suggest we focus on education systems in general, not just the
Yeah,
Kurdistan region for now. What would you improve from the current education systems, especially when it comes to the testing aspect? Although I believe we've addressed most of the points.
I will cover points again. There will be some sort of repeats, but still, I think the educational system should be learning centered. It should not revolve around tests. Although tests are they're a key component to making sure a student has learned this or not, to make sure the student proceeds to the next academic stage or not.
Mm.
But as important as they are, I think that tests should be done, but they should be like the results should be hidden,
Why?
because teachers should care about a student learning over a test score. I still remember when, like literally, when I was in a class, and basically the teachers would literally only judge you based on your test score. If you were very active, if you always raised your hand on any, or for every question on every subject. But if you were just great, and if you got a low test score, then you literally didn't matter, because your worth was related to that test score. I think tests should be standardized and they should be kept hidden, so that students, like, there should be pass fail. There shouldn't be their specific grades should not be given, or at least make it ABCD, make it that letter scale,
Yeah.
like, so that it decreases that sort of competition that exists in those educational institutes.
The thing is, I agree with most of the things you've said, but there's one particular point that I disagree with, and that is the pass fail situation. I agree with having letters replace numbers. I agree with that. And several systems here in the region do abide by that, actually.
Yeah.
But the pass fail, I don't agree with it because, a student can get a 60 and another student can get a 90, and they're both considered as pass. So maybe If it just says pass for the teacher and the student themselves can check that, let's say they've gotten a 60 or a 90, so that they know in what aspect they should improve at. Because if they're just told that they've passed or failed, they're not going to take these subjects seriously anymore. They'll be like, oh, wow, I passed. It doesn't matter now, you know?
That does that does create a very, very good and valid point, but it does take away the competition part and all of that stress that comes along with learning. People are nowadays, like, especially as I said, like people who want like high top places and rankings, they often go towards testing for a score rather than learning, which results in just not I don't think that should be what our education system should stand for,
Yeah,
because we learn these subjects because we learn these all these topics from ranging from mathematics to history to literally sciences to the social sciences to everything. We study all of these things in school because they are really, really important and detriment like they are really important to our health and we to our growth. Sorry, they're really, really important to our growth
yeah,
because when we grow up, like especially our brain, when it develops, we need that sort of mathematics to keep our critical thinking intact. We need that sort of problem solving skills for to learn, to acquire, to grow, and to actually be a functioning adult. We need those humanities and history to learn from our history. We need all of these poems and all of this literature that we study to have that creative part of our brain engaged.
yeah.
So I think learning should be above every other aspect of the educational system.
So basically, if we paraphrase what you just said, uh, so it's not just about the test, it's about learning.
Yes,
Okay, that
it
that is a
should be.
very good point.
Should be.
Well, it
It
should be,
should.
but let's be honest, 90% of schools promote the idea of doing well in the test rather than the other aspects that we just mentioned.
I don't think it's 90. I think it's 100. Like, sadly,
Probably, yeah.
literally, it's not 90. I guess what you meant was like most because you didn't want to generalize. But honestly, if you have a bad score and if you have terrible scores, but you're a great student, then you're still not going to be looked at the same, you know?
Yeah. Enough about the testing aspect of, improving the education systems. Let's talk about the tools that we can use.
Okay. So basically, I think tools are an important addition to our like classrooms and our schools, like the tech and the teaching styles and the teaching methods and the interactive models that could be used for learning, like practical based learning. But I think there were some sort of like things related to the constitution of the education system that needed to be changed first. So tools are important, but I think we need to change so many other things before we change tools. But tools the reason tools are important is because we have so many different types of learners. Like we have auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic learners, people who like read or write. That's how they learn. So many things that could be implemented in a classroom, like smart boards, even though that's kind of too common nowadays. Like so many so many schools have started, especially with the private schools, so many schools have started using smart boards, and interactive models could be used instead of like watching a video to learn a certain topic. They are really important, but as I said, other things should be covered first.
Well, I disagree actually. It's the small things that count. And yeah, tools aren't that big of a deal, to be quite honest, but it's still important to rely on, well, not extensively rely on technology, but just, you know, the thing is, a lot of people disagree with using tablets instead of books, like physical books.
I think everyone's different, so
Well, the thing is, at this point, whether you like using physical books or digital books, the world is slowly evolving to a digital. version, I would say, of books. So
Yeah.
you should adapt to this new environment, just like how we've adapted in the past.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. So many new technology could be implemented in schools.
Another important aspect of improving the education systems would be the design of the campus, actually. This is a unique part. Not a lot of people tend to talk about this aspect of education.
Yeah.
But the design of the schools, the vicinity the student will be staying at for such a long time will, it's really important. You can't ignore the importance of design. We will discuss the design of such schools later in upcoming episodes, but for now, we just want to address the importance of an effective design for a school. The final point that we would like to talk about regarding improving the education systems would be the schedules, the timing, again, all these little details. So, what are your comments on that, Ahmed?
Yeah, I think uh, students should arrive in school early, like either to have a breakfast there or just to socialize until classes start. But I think classes should start not the regular 8:30 or 9. I think it should be much later, up until like 10, because that's the optimum learning time. Students have woken up a bit. Maybe they've had a little bit of physical exercise, they've talked, they've had their chit chat, they've socialized. Now they're like more in a mood to kind of learn. They're not all grumpy from waking up too early from pulling an all-nighter or something like that. So I think classes should start later and students should go home later, but long breaks should be incorporated in between classes, like the regular public school breaks right now is a total of 25 minutes per day. I think that's literally not enough, even though, yes, they do get home very early, but I think it's better if the breaks are in between classes. If the breaks between classes are more, then the students actually absorb the material more and actually will be more rested to continue further with learning. Rather than if the breaks are little, they will be just looking forward to the next break, which is like 10 minutes. Then they will be looking forward to the last period, which ends, then they can finally go home, it will be just looking forward to going home because you're so tired from having no breaks. But I think study periods, let me make my point. I think study periods are really important because students have so much work to do when they go home. Especially in my experience, I had so much, the workload was insane. So I think study periods should be incorporated in between the day, where like students have an hour of time to sit in a library or sit somewhere where they actually get to do some of their work. Like, doesn't matter how much, but just like any amount is still good. Like, so that when they go home, they don't have as much work to do and they have some time to breathe and live and go out and socialize and be with their families and be with other friends and family friends, so that they get to live their life, so that their whole life just doesn't consist of a cycle of going to school, coming home, studying, going to school, coming home, studying. It's just an endless cycle.
So basically, you're saying that it's better if we have longer school hours with more breaks incorporated uh, into the schedule, basically.
Yeah.
You see, I completely disagree with you, and let me explain why. Uh, I would rather have a shorter school hour and go back home as quickly as possible because because of how poor the current education system is. The the stress it has caused and how bored it made me feel around school or
Yeah.
during school time, I would say, has caused me to develop a mentality of me saying, all right, I have 1 hour left till I go home. I have 30 minutes. I have 5 minutes. Finally, I'm not going to see them until tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. You make a really, really, really good point.
The thing is, sorry, let me continue. The thing is, if we do implement most of the things we've stated throughout the podcast, I would say that in a way I would be more excited to learn than just go there or feel like I'm forced to go to school, like how it is at this particular moment.
Exactly. When I said longer school hours, I did not mean with the current system, but literally some people will take that out of context and be like, "Oh, yeah, let's increase the school hours." But no, I did not mean that.
Yeah, literally.
No, I just meant that if the facilities were provided, if the system was great, if we had elective classes, we could pick classes by ourselves, and we do the requirements, but then we have our own extracurricular activities. We have like student clubs and some things to increase, like,
Yeah,
student engagement and student activity. Then in that case, yes, after school hours should be added. And this, yes, in that case, study halls and study periods should be added. Not with the current system, how it is. Like, imagine going through seven periods, each 45 minutes, then still staying to do work. I don't think that's kind of efficient, because you're so tired after having no breaks. Imagine just like staying in school, being forced to stay in school for another hour to just sit. That's just too tiresome. But if the methods of learning and the facilities and the schedules and everything was different, then I really do believe for longer school hours, have so that people dedicate home to rest and school to work. I believe in that. I personally believe in that so much. You should work at home too, like, to further your own self, but you shouldn't be forced to work at home.
I agree. The thing is, I feel like it's impossible to implement the ideal situations.
Literally. It's
I
so
don't know
impossible.
why it just feels this way,
So
unfortunately.
complicated.
But yeah, hopefully someone will have the audacity to change the education system and implement most of the uh, possible ideas we have discussed throughout the
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah, yeah, and good ideas don't end here. There are so many better things, better inspiration to get from. Like, there's experiences. Actually, I think experience is the best thing. Like, if you take from people's experience, listen to people, hear them out, and speak to what they experience. I think that's the only way we can actually grow and we can actually become better.
The thing is, you have to understand that in this situation we are at, considering that we are recording a podcast and all of that,
Yeah,
we can't really think of, every single good idea possible.
exactly. Yeah,
Our shows are not scripted, as evident as it is right now. Uh,
yeah,
so so we won't have every single good idea. You can formulate your own. There are millions of great ideas that we couldn't have, thought of. And most likely, while I release this episode, I'll be like, gosh, I wish I talked about this or that.
yeah.
So
Our
yeah,
perfectionistic instincts will rise.
yeah. As long as this is still not enough.
Yep.
And
But I believe it's a good step. It's a good, at least we talked about it. At least you raise awareness, even if it's to one person. But at least we raised awareness towards the
exactly,
matter. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So another thing we should say as a conclusion would be, no matter what education system you're part of, you should try your best. Try the best that you possibly can. Okay? Know that it really depends on you and nothing else. If you are at a public school at the moment, okay, I know it's difficult to learn English because throughout the years you've only been taught in Kurdish, or the majority of your subjects were in the Kurdish language. Do not blame the system. If you know that you can teach yourself a language or maybe attend a course, an English course, and vice
yeah,
versa, even for the international students, don't blame your school for not knowing the organ systems, let's say, in the Kurdish language. Teach yourself. It really depends on you. Stop blaming other things and start blaming yourself for not learning enough.
wow, you just called out so many people.
No, seriously, like I really want to tell people this, and obviously not in an offensive way. I know the truth hurts sometimes, but yeah,
It is a good point.
it is a
Y-
very good point. As cliche as it sounds, just try your best.
Yep. And yeah, I believe this is the end.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll have another opportunity to talk about another intriguing topic. Cut the Line is one of the shows of the Yellowvine Network, as we talked about. If you want to listen to our episodes, please make sure you follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are available, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, thank you so much, Ali, for being here.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and have a lovely day.